So, have you ever heard of iPad kids? No? Yes.
Oh, I feel like a little bit, yeah.
Like the ones who go up to you during family reunions and then go, "Oh, look at my Minecraft mansion, ate." Or like the ones that look absolutely feral when you come up to them, asking them to stop playing kasi your family's in the middle of mass.
OMG. Oh my god, yung mask. But like, I've never really experienced the full force of an iPad kid. But I've heard a lot of horror stories from friends with their own younger siblings. So like, kuwari yung younger brother niya, he always brings his iPad around kahit saan sila pumunta, and then yung cousin naman like doesn't know how to interact with other people because he's always on his iPad or yung phone ng parents niya. Actually, parang sobrang phenomenon na siya na like to the point na it's a meme to be an iPad kid.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. There are also iPad babies, as in infants who use
Yeah,
iPads.
right. So like an iPad baby is basically a child who, instead of getting to play with physical toys or go outside or socialize with other people their age, essentially they're just plopped down in front of an iPad to keep themselves occupied.
Damn.
Like imagine like a 1-year-old completely obsessed with an iPad. So it's basically a pacifier to them.
Pero, I mean, I feel like it's this ambivalent thing that has its drawbacks and its benefits, you know? Like, statistically,
Right?
children under age 2 spend approximately 1 hour per day on screen media, which isn't bad, I think, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I spend at least 8 hours a day on my computer, and I think I'm doing fine. I think.
Yeah. I think you seem like you're doing fine. Yeah, but like you're like a fully grown adult. So like these are literal babies who don't know how to speak, or to walk, or to read yet.
Well, you do have a point. Though I'd ask, like, what are these kids' parents doing? But it's too easy to demonize these adults, you know, without knowing their different contexts and circumstances. So if you're like a parent who is guilty of, I don't know, giving your kid or giving your baby an iPad, I am not demonizing you. This podcast is not demonizing you.
Yes, this is a safe space for parents. So ayun, like if you're a parent who feels guilty about raising an iPad baby, like don't be afraid because this podcast wants you to know that you aren't alone in that experience.
So we'll take a look at the pros and cons of raising your kid with digital technology like iPads, smartphones, smart TVs. So we're gonna look at like its repercussions and how the pandemic has marked a shift in how we raise children in this digital age.
And syempre, because we're like psych students, it's all through the lens of developmental psychology. Woo!
Sheesh.
Sheesh.
So sit down and tune in for the next segments of e-parenting.
All right, so I'm Hillary,
And I'm Nick.
and we are not parents.
No, we aren't
but
parents.
we are. Yeah. I'm too young for this, but yeah, we are friends, but we are psychology students who want to raise awareness about issues surrounding child development.
So I'm assuming that most of our listeners have gone through the motions of the evolution of technology over the years.
Yeah, actually, like from YouTube to phones with touchscreens, and even now, like smart TVs, it's super wild. And I guess digital media has been this kind of bridge between generations.
Though I've seen a lot of fake news floating around on Facebook and other like SOCMED platforms like Twitter and Instagram. Like yung tipong it's gonna fry your brain daw kapag katabi mong matulog yung cellphone mo. I mean, guilty,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Is it
Guilty.
is it
Yeah.
science backed? I don't know.
Yeah, my mom always tells me that, like, keep it on like your table because it's gonna explode. Another thing is like, sabi daw nila, it's gonna give you like a brain tumor if you watch YouTube like every day.
So, for the parents listening and to those who have fallen prey to these fake pieces of information, worry not because the e-parenting podcast is here to drop some science.
Science. Science. Exciting. So like digital media or like letting your child play on your phone isn't exactly bad. on the in general. So like we'll be elaborating on the pros and cons, so we can give you at least try to give you a balanced risk benefit perspective on letting your kid hold and use a phone.
So we'll go about this by mentioning each aspect of development: the physical aspect, the social emotional aspect, and the cognitive aspect, or basically mental processes like attention, language, and learning. Disclaimer lang na based on current pediatric guidelines na zero screen time talaga yung recommended for babies below 2 years. Zero screen time. We'll talk about this
Whoa.
later, but for now, let's elaborate on the pros and cons nga muna.
Right. So like pro number one in terms of physical development, technology can model active behavior for children. So like when a child mirrors actions done on screen, such as raising their hands or wiggling their toes, it helps improve their physical coordination and gross motor skills. So pati na rin siguro yung fine motor skills actually, if may access sila to touchscreens. So mirror play also helps babies develop self-awareness, which is a key part of their overall socio-emotional development naman.
So, I don't know, like, what would it mean to be self-aware? Like, it's such a philosophical question, no? But, like, psychologically, this means that the child is able to recognize how other people see them, which implies that they can better regulate how they present themselves to other people. Like, for example, they're gonna go goo goo gaga because they know they're a baby. I don't know.
Yeah.
So ano yun, na how they present themselves to other babies or like parental figures like their mom or dad or lolo or lola, ganun.
Yeah. So yung awareness na to, nag-extend siya sa ibang tao. So, sabihin natin na nagiging aware yung bata sa social roles ng ng magulang niya as caretakers. Ayun.
So, technology can also facilitate this zone of proximal development, like in terms of recognizing other people and other complex processes. Hillary, can you like explain this term? Because yeah, I don't think our viewers know the term.
It is our new Psych lingo for the day. So ayun, as Nick said, like, the zone of proximal development was coined by the psychologist Lev Vygotsky. So I hope I'm saying his name right. But yeah, essentially the space between what a learner can do alone and what a learner can do with help. So that's the zone of proximal development.
So, sabihin natin na sa context ng mga babies, maraming bagay yung kayang magawa ng bata na mag-isa. Pero mas marami siyang magagawa at mas kakayanin niya yung mga advanced processes and behaviors kagaya ng paghawak ng spoon and fork if gina-guide siya ng mas experienced na person like their parents.
Ayun. So, sinasabi din ni Vygotsky na pwede rin ma-explore ng baby yung complex roles and rules and concepts regarding identity and social interaction. Pero that's with the help of an external figure. Ayun nga, yung sinabi nga ni Nick kanina na paghawak ng spoon and fork, for example. Pero in terms of identity.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, it's definitely important for the social-emotional development ng kid because we established earlier, di ba, na self-awareness is important for a child to develop in their early years. Pero, we can also call technology an external figure other than parents kasi educational programs like sabihin natin Sesame Street or Blue's Clues can help the baby understand kahit primitively the notions of morality like making other people cry is wrong or biting other people is wrong.
True.
Ganon. Or the notions of gender, which are very complex concepts. So gender kunwari in this cisgendered mindset na, girls wear dresses, boys wear pants. It's, something as primitive as that, even though gender is much more complex.
Yeah, parang, yun nga, parang it also helps. I guess, yung societal norms right now, that's what it is. Na, girls wear dresses. So, natuturo siya, especially sa mga ganitong shows, early on for kids. So, like, even YouTube shows like Coco Melon can also help, like, a child explore their identity by figuring out what they like and what they don't. So, for example, would the baby like be learning that they like media related to dogs or other animals, and that they dislike overly loud stimulus like a firework or like a balloon exploding. So experiencing these types of things talaga, a child really can explore more of what their identity is, even at that young of an age.
Yeah, yeah. I think we've been going around in circles about like the self-awareness, self-identity thing. But ano, fret not kasi this is very important talaga. But basically, technology, if used properly and moderately, and I say properly as in binabantayan mo yung anak mo habang ginagamit niya yung phone,
Right.
can be a tool to facilitate self-exploration and develop self-awareness for the child.
Right, and this actually has great implications on developing empathy within kids, because you understanding the self and the others' mental states is the root of this socio-emotional skill. So yung first 3 years of life represent the critical period for the development of the child's brains or their cognitive abilities and speech. And infants are born with brains that are not really fully developed yet. So your research shows that the brain of a newborn triples in size during the first 2 years of life, and that this growth occurs in direct response to external early life experiences and stimulation. Ayun nga, and including dun sa early life experiences and stimulation, ay yung exposure to technology.
So, yung technology, pwede siyang maging thing na mapapabilis or mapapabagal yung development. So, depende talaga sa use. So, kasama na dyan na hindi pa ganun ka-developed yung emotional regulation and expression parts ng brain ng baby, kagaya ng prefrontal cortex and limbic system. So, yung technology talaga, it can affect how those brain parts develop. Yeah.
Right. So, cognitively naman, there are other skills also being developed when you're exposing your child to technology.
Like increased visual spatial developments and problem solving skills. So you're teaching your child to be a very smart kiddo kasi wow, visual spatial and problem solving skills. The next Sherlock Holmes might
As
have.
an Asian parent.
Hindi, joke lang, we're debunking that. Pero kasi there are a lot of apps out there for babies na sandbox type na games. So other parents or maybe older parents might not know this genre of games, pero basically parang open world, open-ended games sila. Basically like the child is in a digital sandbox. From experience, my baby sister actually played open-ended games like Toka Boca, which you can check out in the App Store. Not a paid advertisement, by the way, but where they can manipulate the different elements of the game, like stacking blocks and mixing different colors of paint. Yeah, so it's very parang nasa sandbox ka talaga, you know, very creative.
Yeah.
And,
grabe ba na talaga yung nilalaro ng children these days.
Yeah.
Parang ako going to a literal sandbox.
Same.
Hindi sandbox, digital.
Social na sila ngayon, social.
But also, technology can actually also promote sustained attention within children. Lalo na if they're just stuck playing one game, kagaya ng yung mentioned earlier.
Wait, can you repeat your line there, Hillary? Kasi medyo nag-choppy siya.
Oh, damn. Okay, one more time.
Okay.
Where do I start? Like, technology can
Yeah.
also promote sa line. Okay. So, yun. So, like, technology can also promote sustained attention within children. Lalo na if they're just stuck playing one game, kagaya ng yun nga, na-mentioned earlier.
So, by exposing your kid to lots of different media rin, they get exposed to tons of different stimulus which they can assimilate into their schemas, or basically, like, what they know about the world. Which also means that they have more things to base their categorizations off.
Oh, right. So, for example, by exposing your child to different dog videos, so they are able to have different concepts of dogs, or like what dogs are, and are able to find the common ground. So, for example, as ever, all dogs look really different from each other. But when they see a Shih Tzu and then they see a Chihuahua, and they're both dogs, they can actually say na, oh, they're both dogs, even though they look so different from each other.
Hypothetically naman if they can speak, pero alam naman nila yun na they're both
Well,
dogs.
like, yeah, maybe they can identify in their minds.
Maybe telepathically, Pero speaking of more cognitive processes, actually other research shows na exposure to language on TV can lead to the development of passive vocabularies, and social interaction
wow.
can turn these vocabularies active. So passive to active. Yun.
So yung drawback nga lang na older children can learn vocab from TV alone, whereas younger children can learn vocabulary only when supported by social interaction. So supervising your child while they use a tablet or a phone is really important in these cases talaga.
Pero the problem is that the experimental studies na we checked for this segment, how they were conducted, yung stimulus kasi na in-expose yung mga bata, highly regulated educational children's shows. So like Barney, Blue's Clues, Sesame Street. So iba na yung usapan kapag unregulated content, kagaya ng TikTok or like mga gamer videos on YouTube, ganun. Especially if naka-off yung parental moderations. So especially if hindi pang bata talaga yung videos.
Right. Right, so we're back from our little break. Ayun nga, marami talagang pros yung technology sa bata, and that was definitely a mouthful for us to discuss. So, ang daming concepts, ang daming nasabing topics to explore regarding this kanina.
Yeah, hopefully na-explain naman namin like in a digestible manner. Pero for now, let's discuss the risks and cons of exposing your child, quote-unquote, too early to technology like YouTube and phone games. And I say child as in 3-month-old baby, 6-month-old baby. Kasi hindi pa toddler baby. So, sa physical aspect, there are actually a lot of studies that back up na children who are overly preoccupied with smartphones or tablets are prone to 1, obesity, 2, physical inactivity, and 3, sleep problems. As in, puyat na anak mo, bata pa lang sila. Hintay-hintay muna. Siguro pag mga college na sila, pwede na sila mag-sleep problems. Joke lang. Pero, actually, yung physical problems na to, it's due to a lack of goal-directed behavior such as playing with blocks, running from one place to another. And in terms of sleep, yung exposure talaga ng LED lights, it can disrupt melatonin levels, which is the chemical responsible for sleep regulation. So, ayun.
Screen media has significant impacts then on children's posture, deterioration of eyesight, and yung lack of exercise and play, as said kanina. So kaya, ayun, parents that are listening, if your child is on a smart gadget all day and lack practice sa gross motor skills nila, like rolling around or crawling, this may be like a source of alarm for you because your child is starting to live a sedentary lifestyle.
So there's actually this hypothesis called the displacement hypothesis that says na extended screen time, especially lone screen time, so when you leave your child alone with a gadget, it would reduce the time and opportunities available for the kinds of real-world experiences needed to support the physical development of the baby.
Right, and this also extends to the lack of interpersonal interactions due to yung preoccupation with gadgets nga if buong araw puro gadgets lang yung nakikita nila. So, this has great implications for the child's socio-emotional development then.
And yun nga, in terms of development, the context of the pandemic has definitely affected a lot of children's development over the 3 years we've been
almost 3, I feel like.
Pandemic, yeah. So, yung development kasi na yun, it's heavily dependent on the interaction with the family then. So, since the context of the pandemic has affected nga how families have interacted with each other and their environment, in the months that people have been stuck at home, infants have also had limited experiences of the world, especially in terms of play and social interaction.
So like, ayun, imagine nga tayo as college students we're already like losing a lot of our life sa pandemic. So paano pa like
Yeah,
the
for
little
sure.
children who need to experience all of that. So parents can fill this gap in experience with technology and help keep their boredom at bay.
Yun nga, but without parental intervention to create alternative activities at home, like for
Mm-mm.
example, um, instead of playing on an iPad, you give your kids or kid a crayon and a piece of paper to doodle on. Having those alternatives, it would be very helpful to have some variety. Kasi if
True.
young children will depend solely or mostly on digital gadgets to maintain their positive mood, they'll be unable to resist the temptation of an immediate reward.
Right. So like,
Yun.
yeah, go on.
Yeah, like, parang ang laki talaga ng implications sa emotional regulation, no?
Yeah, so like what good emotional regulation looks like talaga is when a child can resist highly emotional reactions to upsetting stimuli. And like, yun, pag bigla silang nagulat or something, when they have good emotional regulation, they can calm themselves down when they get upset and can adjust to a change in expectations and can handle frustration without an outburst.
Pero malamang this isn't expected of a baby. Kasi malamang baby sila. They're still in the
Yeah.
process of getting better at emotional regulation. So we have to take that into consideration.
Right. So we're just saying lang na I feel like it's just best to start early lang din in making your child parang in making sure na your child develops well eventually. So when you make your child dependent on gadgets to regulate their emotions, it might be a bad thing, especially sa long run because paano na yun kung walang charge yung gadget or may nasirang gadget. Hindi naman pwede na yung solution nyo bibigyan ng ibang gadget yung bata, di ba? Para tumahan sa pag-iyak. So, you can't just keep relying on gadget.
Yeah. I mean, I think I should also take that advice kasi parang pag nagbe-breakdown ako, I just find myself scrolling on TikTok. So, if your baby is crying,
Relatable.
if your baby is crying, please do not give them a phone. Please do not give them an iPad. Like,
Yes.
as much as possible, they need like human interaction to soothe their emotions, ganun. And since one-sided
Right.
din naman yung relationship between the child and the screen, mahirap i-develop yung important social learning competencies such as self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. That's a handful,
So,
pero
right.
you know, like it all starts somewhere.
Yeah, it's a lot of words but kaya. So, ayun, mas recommended pa rin na tao yung kausap at nakaka-interact ng bata. Because hindi naman replicate ng technology yung dynamics ng interpersonal communication kagaya ng body language. So, like, your iPad can't hug your kid.
Yeah, that's
Your
true.
iPad can't
I'd
console
be
your kid.
freaked out if my iPad can do that.
It throws hands.
No.
Oh no! Like in this rapidly changing environment as well, it's more common to see families depending on technology and media. So given that, infants really are overly exposed to media use. And as we've mentioned before, there's a lot of repercussions then, cognitively and even physically.
Yeah, pero for now, siguro we'll talk about the cognitive repercussions. Lower attention spans, for example. Kasi technology is fast and instant eh. Like, TikTok, it's fast and it's instant. It's literally 15 to 30 seconds of a video and then you swipe to the next one. So, quick scene changes, flashing lights, bright colors, and loud sounds may be overstimulating for the developing brain, lalo na for a developing child. Kasi this gives instant gratification to the kid. Kaysa na normal social interaction and play na may gratification delays, which teaches a child to regulate their own behaviors and direct their attentions to their specific goals. So, compare mo sa so sabihin natin, TikTok. 15 to 30 seconds, you can change the video at any given time. Swipe, swipe, swipe. Pero
Yeah.
compared to in real life interaction, hindi mo naman pwede i-fast forward yung pag-usap mo sa ibang tao, di ba?
True. Right. So like may risk then aside from that sa language delays if longer than recommended yung exposure ng bata sa screen. So as you mentioned earlier, 'di ba? Exposure to language on TV can lead to the development of passive vocabularies.
Yung ibig sabihin na to, naiintindihan ng bata yung word, pero hindi niya kaya i-articulate or i-express. So, yun yung passive. So, if technology hinders the parent-child interaction, then you need to backtrack. As in, wait lang. Let's check on your relationship with your baby because yes, you're letting your child learn all these words, pero di mo sila binibigyan ng kausap para mapagpraktisan yung mga natututunan nila. There's this thing kasi called transfer deficit phenomenon. Have you heard of it, Hillary?
I've actually heard just a bit about it. So like another concept for our listeners today. So yung transfer deficit phenomenon, it just means that infants have difficulty applying what they learn across different contexts. So they do not transfer yung learning nila from media. So transfer deficit and they do from face-to-face interaction. So yung mga natututunan nilang conversations galing sa TV or YouTube, hindi na nila kayang gayahin at the same level when may kaharap na silang other actual human being in front of them.
And actually, isa yan sa pinagkakaabalahan ko during the pandemic kasi mahirap makapaghanap ng opportunities for safe social interaction given na may COVID nga. Like, bumababa nga yung cases, pero babies kasi, children, hindi pa sila bakunado. Alam mo yun?
Yeah. So, like, mas may risk pa rin sila if you bring them out. So, yun. So, yung child, walang means to go out and explore and interact. Kaya, siguro parents think na technology is a good alternative for them to channel their energy.
And with the current pandemic kasi, it kind of sounds like a lost cause, no? Kasi it feels like there's no end in sight to the cases. I mean, call me a pessimist, pero isip ko, parang, kailan ba ito matatapos? Pero, I mean, at least may decline naman and gumagaan na yung quarantine restrictions. But I don't see anything being done on a major scale especially with these children in mind.
Yeah, feeling ko it'll take a long while for us to like get back to how, or I mean, syempre new normal na forever, but like to get back to children actually getting to interact with other children in outside.
Yeah.
So yun, we'll take a short break and then we'll talk about what you can do on the individual and family levels in order to provide your child with opportunities for a well-adjusted development.
So, we're back, and now that we've talked a bit about the current situation on digital media and its use in families with infants, of course, we have to talk about what we can do or what families can do to address these developmental issues.
Ayun. So, baka ito pa kayong inaabangan ng listeners natin. Kasi syempre, for those who live with infants or for parents, syempre, they might like to know the steps they can take with regards to what we've just learned.
So, to start, I think it's important to preface this by saying that we all have our different circumstances in life. Especially now we all have our own battles that we're facing, etc., etc. I just want to tell all our listeners to give themselves like a pat on the back if they're taking care of any babies at home. Because that's definitely like an amazing feat in itself. Like, you're literally taking care of another human being.
Oh, right?
Like, huh? It baffles me. But we hope with this small episode of ours, we can help you guys out in some way.
Right. So true. I know my parents surely had a hard time raising me, but I hope you guys can appreciate the suggestions we have for you today. So like when it comes to digital media use, one thing parents should look out for is screen time. So according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, preschool age children are only recommended 1 hour of screen time per day. So we're focusing on like babies in this episode, right? So as we said kanina, for babies naman, it says in the guidelines that children below 2 years old should avoid it altogether.
Pero there have been movements to change these restrictions. Parang from what I remember, pediatricians and even the AAP are leaning towards updating the guidelines because of the changing media environment, especially over the course of the pandemic.
And yun, although there might be some benefits that parents can see from using digital media with their children, it's still important to regulate these to prevent possible negative outcomes from excessive exposure. As said nga kanina, there were a lot of possible cons then. But on how we can actually regulate it, I actually think it's easy to relate that to what we have possibly done to ourselves. So personally, I have a problem also with screen time. Whoa, I'm not a baby, but I recently found out that it's like possible to set time limits for our screen time. So there are certain apps that like will warn you when you're going over the time limit that you set in using that app for the day, ganon. Or like when it comes to using digital media with babies, it's also important to set your own time limits.
Oh, that's interesting. I should definitely like try that. Pero have you
Yeah.
heard about how it's been said then na you shouldn't use your phone 30 minutes before going to sleep? Like, have you
Oh
heard
no.
that?
Yeah, I've heard it a lot. It's actually like it's hard to put them down then. Like you're on the bed now, but then you can't put your phone down. So
Yeah,
it's
felt.
true actually. But yeah, it's the same thing with babies that they shouldn't be exposed to it when it's near their bed.
Yeah. So, when it's near their bedtime talaga dapat, like, turn off the lights, like, let the baby lie down, let them close their eyes, ganon. So, I think these sound like a type of strategy that focuses on restricting a certain thing, and actually parents may also use other restrictive strategies, so not just regarding time, but it's also helpful to designate certain areas where your child will be tech free. So for example, in the living room they can play on the iPad, but in the bedroom bawal talaga kasi the child needs to know that there's a time and place for
Yeah. So like I mean you mentioned din kanina na maybe we can designate the living room as a place na they can use it. But then in the bedroom, it's a place that maybe you shouldn't be using the gadgets. So ayun, it's nice to establish a habit that family members don't have their phones, for example, in addition to like the bedroom. Like when they're eating at the dinner table, maybe family members shouldn't have their phones on, like they're not looking at their phones, like they're focusing on bonding with each other lang ganon. But aside from that, if for example you guys have a playroom, so like if parents, if you guys have a playroom or like designated area where your kid plays, it can be like that one tech free environment, and you can encourage environment where they're all like yung toys naman nila, like that's where they play or read their books. But then you can also encourage appreciating nature. So like when you guys go outside, syempre wag niyo naman i-focus sa gadgets niyo. Like when you bring your babies outside, try to appreciate nature with them then.
Yeah, that's true. So basically from what I understood, there's a toy zone, toy/play/leisure zone, and there's a tech zone. So there may be an intersection between the two, but as much as possible, try to bring those two areas apart, or try to discriminate between those two areas. So you mentioned encouraging play and going outdoors, but for example, here in the Philippines kasi, we're still pretty much restricted, and a lot of families wouldn't choose to go out, or they can't go out because of different circumstances nga, like may high risk sa bahay. And I think I'm curious lang how there can be a workaround for that.
Right. So I think it's probably one of the reasons nga, like as said before na, families still appreciate using digital media during the pandemic with their children kasi they could at least communicate with relatives, and even though it's limited interaction, at least yun nga, they get to interact with others pa rin without going outside. And when it comes to making sure that your kids have time to play, I feel like sobrang laki rin talaga ng pressure on parents to try and be creative during the pandemic. I suppose it's still possible naman to play certain games with your child or read books without the help of technology. So syempre, assisted reading with physical children's books is one thing, and also there are other possible toys that you can interact with your child without with technology by your side na.
Yeah. Pero kahit nga hindi toys kasi even with like day-to-day objects, to promote
Yeah.
imaginative play within your child. Like, give your child a spoon, tas gagawin niyang rocket ship or something. Like, that promotes
All
imaginative
right.
play within the child. So yun nga, I like to think na technology cannot replace human interaction, and I don't think technology can uh, teach a child the same creativity as they can learn in the real world. Kasi
Hmm.
at the end of the day, there needs to be a balance when it comes to that.
Yeah, so we really can't displace yung important interactions with technology. Although, yun nga, it might be a strategy to help distract your kids when you're busy or stressful. I mean, hopefully though, when the country recovers soon from the pandemic, children can be able to see more of their environment and get to appreciate the wonders outside of their homes.
Right. So I think it's important nga to see the value of digital media, but also at the same time, we have to be wiser in how we use them and how we let other people, especially our children, use them.
Right. So I think that's a really smart thing to say, and that's exactly what a lot of literature are saying then.
At the end of the day, it's still important to have family time and to bond. But I think,
Yeah.
especially for infants, it's just really important to establish that bond with them. And I think it's a good investment na you're establishing like an early bond with your child. Kasi, um, you have memories to look back on with your kid.
Right. So like imagine you said that they have to go like they get home from work, right? And still have to take care of their baby. Like imagine them having to listen to Baby Shark for years because that's what their kid is used to listening now.
Yeah, yeah. So parang imagine like instead of uh giving your kid like quality time, sabihin natin,
Yeah.
paglaki ng baby, puro Baby Shark at Coco Melon alam niya. Or like,
No.
ayaw mo ba na yung mas alam ng baby mo, yung, I don't know, yung mukha mo kaysa yung mukha ni Coco Melon? Okay.
But when they draw their family picture,
Kasama si Coco Melon.
yeah, kasama yung character sa Coco Melon. But yeah, joking aside, infants really need more hands-on exploration rather than experiencing digital media. So they really need to learn being in a three-dimensional space and interacting with others.
Right. So, like, I feel like we've been talking a lot about, taking care of babies. But at the same time, especially sa pandemic, di may iwasan na ma-stress yung parents or ma-burnout because of their situation. I think we also need to emphasize na parents also need to take care of themselves.
That is true. That is super right. And I'm pretty sure that a parent's well-being is essential then to the well-being of their child. So I feel like paulit-ulit na nga natin na mention na stressful talaga yung pag-alaga ng bata. So baka minsan maging crutch yung paggamit ng gadgets and digital media. So TBH ako rin, nagiging crutch ko rin ng pandemic. Yung paggamit ng phone ko all the time. I mean, because it's the only like most accessible thing for me during lockdown.
I think that it would be healing then for parents to seek hobbies na unrelated to technology. Kasi you're modeling behavior for your kid eh. Or kahit sabihin natin na hindi hobby, basta something that they can enjoy without technology. Like, for example, drawing. It's never too late to learn. Painting by numbers or filling out the coloring book. That's fun. So you can do those activities with your child. So feel free
Yeah,
to
so
explore something during the pandemic, especially with your
right.
kid. Like, it's good quality time.
Yeah, so there are a lot of activities talaga na they can do with their kid then na your kid doesn't have to fully understand. You said painting by numbers and maybe some kids I feel like it's really still a good time for them to learn and bond with you as a parent if you do stuff like that.
Man, alam mo, na-realize ko lang na how much parents have to think about din talaga when it comes to their kid. And I think then it's easy to say na if something goes wrong, it's automatically a parent's fault.
Like when something bad happens to a kid, like syempre, people automatically look at the parent agad. Like, what did they do?
Yeah. But I mean, like, look at us right now in lockdown during a pandemic, ha? That's like a situation that is out of the parents' control. Like, each citizen naman, we all work around what our society does and what our government does.
Right, that's so true. And as hard as we try to syempre we are limited with what we can do. So we tell each other, oh, you can find hobbies, new activities. But syempre it's still super important to have support from other institutions and especially yung government natin.
I think, syempre, first and foremost, important yung pandemic response. Kasi before we can even talk about what other things institutions can come up with to help these parents and their babies, yun nga, that's the most pressing issue right now. Like, what bigger social institutions can do to give opportunities to the parents to help raise their child better.
So like we're all trying to maneuver around the new normal, and there are certain aspects of our lives that are still not ideal. So syempre there are the obviously economic consequences. But what's more is that children should be able to be with other children and interact with their relatives, and just live normal lives and appreciate the outside world.
Right, right. And it would be hard to parang assimilate into being in crowds or being with other people if you've been cooped up for so long at home. Parang, like, gets mo, like, kaya minsan may nakikita kang bata, pag linabas mo yung bata sa bahay, tapos may nakikita siyang hindi niya kilala, like, magwawala siya, like, iiyak siya ng
Yeah.
iiyak. So, that phenomena talaga, you can owe it, or one of the things you can owe it to is the fact na the pandemic has kept us in our houses for so long and has deprived us of social interaction for so long. But practically, if we look into what other support the government can give us, perhaps after the pandemic, I think an important thing is to be able to establish more publicly accessible daycares where they can
Right.
safely drop off their kids without having to preoccupy them with electronic devices. So, as in may mga daycares na may mga social workers, tapos may mga developmental specialists.
Right. So because parents can be working on something and they don't necessarily have people they can trust to take care of their kids, having quality daycares to provide the right care for babies would be wonderful for these parents. So were you in the daycare when you were a kid? Nick?
No. Kasi yun nga, hindi accessible yung daycares. Pero I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by loving family members and my parents' friends who took care of me while my parents were still starting their
Right.
career. Yeah.
So yeah, like I've been to a daycare and like the only thing I can vaguely remember was that I would always try to sleep in the small cubbies where they keep the blankets because it just felt comfy. So
Cute,
I
cute.
love daycare. Maybe I don't know. Maybe as a kid I loved daycare. That's all I remember.
Yeah. Pero with how things are talaga in the Philippines especially, parang sending your kid to a daycare is a privilege. Pero
Yeah.
yun nga, as I was saying, daycares should be accessible for all families, and it should be a comfy, safe place for both the baby and the parents. Pero I'm sure na the experiences we have in our infancy are important for our growth. And even though I didn't grow up in a daycare, I think I turned out fine. But yeah, I think one important thing to learn is that it really takes a community to take care of a child.
Ayun, so personally, I also think that single-parent families should be given more support from the government because they can't exactly be at work and caring for their babies at the same time.
Yeah, that is true. And I really think that it's a matter of opportunities talaga na people should be able to take leaves from work in order to take care of their kids or even
Yeah.
work from home if there aren't arrangements for other people to watch over the baby.
Right, especially during the pandemic, no?
Yeah, basta on a bigger scale, like something definitely needs to be done.
You're right. So actually, I've read this interesting article about how music therapists in the intensive care nursery shifted to virtual music therapy for the infants in the nursery. So it was brought upon by the pandemic, and the infants in the intensive care units couldn't be visited by the music therapist, and visitation from parents were also limited.
Oh, that's pretty sad because the infants would be separated most of the time from their relatives.
For those infants na really need specific care in hospitals, yung music therapy is one of the ways to provide developmentally appropriate stimulation for them. para they can still reach developmental milestones while in the NICU. So like yung therapist was like, perhaps this was a chance to like still go through music therapy but through video calling. So it's actually a pretty cute concept, and like so nasa Zoom sila and the babies are with the nurses ganun, or like their
Aw.
parents. Yeah. And then the therapist yung isang nasa screen, and like she wasn't wearing a mask. So yun nga, she was able to wear a mask para the babies could see her smiling and singing. So I think that's really an important interaction for the kids in the nursery.
So, I'm wondering what are the other benefits kaya of video calling? Kasi I think na we should separate the notion na screen time and video calling are the same things when they're actually very different media for your child to consume.
Right. So like, ayun nga, one of the other benefits of having this interactive video call, kasi diba, usually the parents, or like relatives wouldn't be able to visit. Kasi for one, pandemic, tapos nasa intensive care nursery pa sila. So, yung mga relatives na want to see the babies, they can go into the call sa music therapy, so they can see the babies, and so like the parents can see their kid with the nurse and with the music therapist. So I think it's pretty noteworthy to say na yung infants who would this is another benefit then, like for infants who have a hard time being transported to music therapy class, they can actually participate now. So parang sinabi sa article na more babies are actually able to participate in the music therapy class. Because for example, babies who have respiratory issues, they have tracheotomy. So parang ang daming equipment na have to be brought into a normal room, diba? So like if it's a Zoom call, they were able to participate in the call pa rin. So they didn't need to be transported.
So I feel like at least in this situation, having supervised use of digital technology with infants, it really brings like a lot of benefits. I think that's really cool, and I like how the staff adapted to the pandemic, and you know, they were still able to give the quality care that the infants in the NICU need.
Yeah, and I thought it was really inspiring. So like my point essentially, so because we were talking about what institutions can do, right? So for example, hospitals or educational institutions right now, they can consider redesigning their existing therapy sessions or classes for infants to better adjust to the restrictions of the pandemic. Moving forward, I can see the innovations of new techniques as a consequence of the pandemic may inform institutions of what they can be able to do for those who might need more support. So like, now that the hospitals can do this, right, during the pandemic, what would stop them from being able to extend this kind of care to those in need even after the pandemic?
Yeah, that's right. I think one good thing from this is that we learned about some workarounds during the pandemic. And I am glad that families, especially infants in intensive care units or infants in isolation, were able to benefit from it. Pero I think I also want to add how important app developers and hardware manufacturers are, given our changing environment that's dependent on a lot of technology. Pero for example, I think we mentioned a while ago nga that it would be nice to have parents and children interact while using digital devices or media. Kasi it really isn't enough if children are just left with these devices. So what developers can do are create applications that encourage reading, playing, or just spending time with the infant and the parent.
So, diba, I think you mentioned a while ago about this sandbox game. Like, do you imagine, like, if possible in the future, like, it can be a sandbox game now?
Co-op,
Parents can also, like, it's a co-op. Yeah, I feel like that would be really cute.
But I think it would be pretty cute nga since I have a younger sister of my own, and being able to have like moments like those na okay, like I won't just supervise her sa paggamit ng iPad, but I'll get to join in with her on the fun. Like that would be a great experience.
So, since you have a younger sister, I wanted to ask you lang, like when she was a baby, or like really young, aside from like, you know, you introduced Coco Melon.
Yeah.
Are there more, or like did she really like love Coco Melon when she was younger?
She really loved Coco Melon as a baby. Pero I had my
Yeah.
doubts nga because there was this article that came out na Cocomelon was sort of a drug to children. Like, ang controversial, like drug.
Oh yeah,
So,
I saw that.
so I kind of got scared and doubted if Cocomelon actually has developmental experts behind its making, you know.
Aside from Cocomelon, there are actually a few other shows, quite like Sesame Street, na is confirmed na is written and supervised, or at least supervised by developmental specialists para age appropriate and beneficial sa growth ng viewers nila yung show. So I think it's important then for different types of media to have that type of discipline of being fact-checked by developmental specialists and educators. Kasi ang dami nang pwedeng makita online, di ba? And I think it would be nice to help parents discern what kind of apps or shows yung makakabuti sa kiddos nila.
Kaya it really brings to light na science communication or like accessibility to the social sciences like developmental psychology is very, very important. Like, lalo na during this time. Kaya, there should be more developmental experts in media, in the product industry.
That's true.
Ayun. So, it all boils down to how these shows are made and how these shows are fed to the babies or the children. Okay, so time to wrap things up. Hilly, do you have any words for our listeners?
I just wanted to say na it was really nice talking about these things, like yun nga, how important developmental psych talaga is for, parents and for the well-being of babies, and hopefully our listeners got something out of it.
And you know that Spider-Man reference nga, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yes. So don't leave your baby unattended with technology, because that iPad doesn't have as discerning of a brain as yours, nor a heart as big as yours.
Oh, that's so cute. That's
Wow.
Wow. Quotable quotes. We all want what's best for our children, so we really have to keep in mind na with technology, a child's world can either grow bigger or shrink smaller. Gets ba?
Another quotable quote.
Another quotable quote.
And it's ultimately up to the parents to guide the child if technology limits them or brings them to their best potential.